The idea was to move waitlisted passengers from trains to the distress inventory on flights. Distress inventory is basically the seats that go unsold till like a few hours before a flight takes off. So most probably those seats won't be sold by the airlines, right? So my idea was to move people who are on wait list on trains to these flights at similar costs. So airlines basically fill their empty seats, they get some revenue, and people who are on wait list who have no way to travel, who are just waiting for the tickets to get confirmed, they still get a seat, they still get a flight seat. Although at a short notice of like 6 hours or so, but still they get a flight seat, right?
Preview.
Ankush, thank you so much for taking out time today and helping us out with another amazing episode. We love what you're building at Multiply and would love to learn how Multiply is going to help millions of credit card users in India. Personally, I would say that credit card is not a very known topic in India. People generally, because of how UPI is flourishing, they mostly are trying to use UPI, and as you say, UPI is unrewarding, but credit cards are rewarding. So I think from this conversation, a lot of people will learn how to use credit cards, which credit cards to use, and absolutely love the product you're building, and we are looking forward to the launch. So once again, thank you for taking our time today, and we're looking forward to have a wonderful conversation with you.
Thank you, Samyak. Thank you, Samarth, for inviting me to begin with, and for your kind words. We are also hoping that the product lives up to everyone's expectations. We have put in a lot of effort. We've been working on it for quite some time. There's a big team behind it. I am just the face who's posting stuff on LinkedIn, but there's a big team behind the product who's working very hard. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, all the posts that you put on credit cards, which one rewards what, and which one to choose, and everything are really insightful. So anyone listening to this, I recommend going and following you for sure if they want to know which is the right credit card for them. So on that note, starting with the first question which we usually ask our guest is, what was it like growing up? How was your relationship with money? Because you're building a fintech product, just want to understand, how did you get interested in this? Were you always like a finance geek, a credit card nerd, or what was it like growing up, especially because you're from India, Delhi? How was it all?
Yeah, so my dad was in Air Force. So since childhood, I've traveled across the country. I've lived in a lot of different places, moved every few years from here and there. And we didn't really have a lot of money. It was a very normal childhood. I distinctly remember in, I think, 7th or 8th class, one of my very close friends in school got a computer at that point. And I stopped eating for a few days, insisting that my parents get me a computer. And so they had to break a fixed deposit, and they got me my first computer. So they did, but I'm sure I've made them proud over the years with whatever I've done. So even though they had to break a fixed deposit to get me a computer, I'm sure I've done well because of that. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, other than that, there wasn't any luxuries, or so to speak, because my dad was not, he wasn't even an officer. Actually, he was a non-commissioned officer in Air Force. So money was okay. We never really had a lot. And then they sent me, my parents, they put all of their money together, and they sent me to Kota to train for 2 years to get into IITs. I did not clear IIT, so I dropped another year and stayed with my parents. And then this time I was pretty confident, and I went to IIT. I got a good rank, and I went to IIT Delhi, chose mechanical engineering over there. I was fast enough to realize that it was not my cup of tea. Engineering, and especially mechanical engineering, I realized I was never going to work in a core mechanical engineering field. But I very quickly got interested in business as well. That's when I started tinkering with ideas. Right from my second year of college, I started tinkering with ideas. I set up a small penny auction website called the Bid Guru at that point of time. I came across penny auction sites, just browsing and sitting in college and in the hostel. And so I thought, why not build one of my own? There were not any penny auction sites in India at that point of time. So that was the first thing I burnt my hands with. I put in some money, took some money from dad, put in some money in that. Could not develop it myself. I was never really a coder myself. So paid someone else to build that. Did not really work. I overestimated the market size, overestimated the demand for something like that, etc., etc. There were good learnings from there. But what it taught me was I had a knack for business, and that is what I was going to do. I had a
Mm-hmm.
knack for building products, and that is what I would do throughout my life, and that is what I have been doing now. So if I look back at my career of about 10 years now, I have been mostly, I have spent my time building products, in ideation and building products, and that is what my forte is. That is what I believe I can do in the middle of the night if you wake me up and ask me to do that. So yeah, I mean that's what happened. And then in my college, around second year of college, I got my first credit card. And since obviously I was not earning anything, so I got a secured card. I got a fixed deposit of 50,000 rupees, and
Mm-hmm.
against that I got a secured credit card from SBI. They gave me a limit of 90% of the fixed deposit, which is 45,000, and that's when I started using cards. And that's when I got hooked to this, using cards for reward stuff. That's when I actually started getting hooked to that. So it's been about 13 years now since I've been using cards. But and anyway, so that was the first card that I got. It actually grew slowly on me. I didn't really get into it at that point because obviously my choices were limited. I could not get a lot of cards, etc., etc. Then in my final semester of college, I dropped out because I was working on some other startup idea. The idea was to move waitlisted passengers from trains to the distress inventory on flights. Distress inventory is basically the seats that go unsold till like a few hours before a flight takes off. So
Mm-hmm.
most probably those seats won't be sold by the airlines, right? So my idea was to move people who are on wait list on trains to these flights at similar costs. So airlines basically fill their empty seats, they get some revenue, and people who are on wait list who have no way to travel, who are just waiting for their tickets to get confirmed, they still get a flight seat,
Right.
although at a short notice of like 6 hours or so, but still they get a flight seat, right? They do a 18-hour journey in about 2 hours. So that was
Correct.
the idea. I got two of my friends on board. They were also not from coding background, so I mean, eventually I was thrown out of my own startup. Cutting the story short, so it did not really work. So I went back, and then I finished my last semester. So I eventually finished my graduation from IIT Delhi. So I have the degree. If anyone asks now, so I did that. So I had to graduate in 2012 initially, but finally then I graduated in 2013. So been about 10 years now since I've been working. But yeah, so when I graduated in 2013, then I picked up a job in teaching, in mentoring students for IIT and medical entrance examinations.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined Bansal classes, and that was my first proper job. And that's when I got my first proper cards, like not secure cards, but proper cards. So I got HDFC Bank card, I got an Axis Bank card. And at that time, there used to be these no EMI offers on anything that you buy on Flipkart and Amazon, right? So I used to buy a lot of gadgets. I used to buy tablets and these DSLR cameras. So I had all of these. I used to maintain a list while in college, of list of gadgets that I am interested in and I wanted to buy. So I bought all of them with credit cards at no cost EMIs, and then by using these cards I was earning rewards as well. So that's when I actually started getting hooked. So about 10 years now. And then initially I would redeem these reward points on credit cards for some for some cheap products. I would redeem for movie tickets and stuff. That's how I initially started, and I believe that's how mostly everyone starts. When you start using cards and when you get to learn about reward points, you redeem them for things that you need at that point of time. You're short sighted, you don't plan much ahead, right? Because now 10 years later, now I plan. Now I plan that I have to take a first class flight on Singapore from India to on Singapore Airlines from India to Singapore, and then from Singapore to maybe Auckland or Sydney. So I plan and I accumulate reward points, lakhs of reward points. But initially, when you're young and you're just starting, you have 1,000 reward points. You're like, yeah, fine, let's redeem for a 250 rupee movie voucher. So that's how I started as well. But over time, I have evolved. The way I look at reward points, that has evolved. Um, so yeah, I mean, been a fantastic journey. Right now, I generate around 15 to 20% returns on all of my spending through credit cards. So if I'm spending, I don't know if I should say the numbers out loud, but anyway, whatever I spend on my credit cards, I generate a return of around 15 to 20%. So even if I'm spending 10 lakh rupees in a year, I'll get rewards worth 2 lakh rupees. Now these rewards are in the form of free flight tickets, domestic, international, free hotel stays, etc., etc. So yeah, mostly it has been self-taught. To be honest, didn't really come from my family. No one in my family ever really used credit cards or was interested in that stuff. So kind of self-taught all of it through from college till now. Yeah.
Understood. So again, I think you have had a very elaborate career. You've been on the product side. You've been created your own startup, which was really very interesting. I don't think anyone would have thought, checking of customers who are on waitlist and giving them, distress flight tickets. I don't think there are a lot of startups doing that, or I have heard of the same.
Oh,
How?
by the way, on that note, so I was doing this in 2012. In
Uh-huh,
2015 or 16, like 4 or 5 years later, a
uh-huh.
startup came that was doing the exact same thing. So I was way ahead of my time actually.
Understood.
So I was doing it in 2012, like 4 or 5 years before anyone else thought of doing that. I did not succeed at it, but then it was tried by other people. So I take
Got it.
consolation in the fact that I was ahead of my time. So yeah.
Understood. Yeah, I mean it's a very good concept. Whoever's on waitlist can get distress flight tickets, and pretty interesting. They can cover the journey earlier and at the same cost. So I think if there is a proper product right now, I don't mind checking it out, because after IRCTC, or I would say government, removing that senior citizen thing and stuff like that, the flight tickets, the train tickets have like risen up a lot, and a
Yes.
lot of people are just moving to flights, even if it's like just a difference of like 500,000 bucks here, because they would save a lot of time there. So I
Right.
think that was a really good idea. Coming to your product, roles, and you building different products across different domains and companies. What led you into building products, and what are the few things you would recommend or doing, or you should be mindful of while kind of creating a product, be it in any domain? Like, you can take an example of Multiply itself, but
Right.
what are the few things you have to be wary of when you're creating a product?
Right. Yeah. So okay. I mean, I know I'll get a lot of flack for this, but I think the product manager role has been way more glamorized than it should be. Um, I have been a product manager for a very long time. I've headed product at a few organizations. I've been first product hire at some organizations. So I've built products from scratch, almost from scratch, in a lot of times, at my own startups, at some other startups. I believe this product manager role, it's like being extreme. I don't think that position even needs to exist, because, and I'll tell you why. Because I think anyone anyone can get into product, and anyone can do product. One thing that you need to have, the most crucial thing that you need to have to build good products, is to have empathy with the user, is to understand users. uh,
Right.
Actually, even more than understanding users, understanding the need. So let me try and explain, right? So whenever you're using a product, it could be any product, it could be an app, it could be a physical product, anything. You are not actually interested in the product. What you're interested in is a need that you need to get solved, right? So let's take an example of food delivery. When you're sitting at home, your need is to get food delivered at your home, so that you can, you don't have to travel to a restaurant and sit there and eat and then travel back and, spend 2 hours traveling, etc. Your
Right.
need is that the food gets delivered to your place, right?
Right.
Earlier, what used to happen was the restaurants used to deliver themselves. They would, either send out menus when you dine with them.
Mhm.
Along with the bill, they'll give out a menu to you, so that you could order from home, or you could call up the restaurant, find their number on Just Dial or wherever, and you could call them up and you'll tell them to send X, Y, and Z stuff, and they do that. They'll take an hour or they'll take 2 hours or whatever, right?
Right.
Need was the same. When Swiggy and Zomato came, need was the same. But
Mhm.
someone else solved that need in a better way, right?
Correct.
Swiggy got that same food. And Zomato displayed all of those menus very neatly laid up in an app. You could, without interacting with anyone, without trying to explain to someone if you need paneer lababdar or kadhai paneer or whatever on phone, without going through all of those accents and trying to making them understand, you could just simply do that in a few minutes on an app. So that need was solved in a better way by a product, right?
Correct.
So essentially, a user is looking to get their needs solved, right?
Mhm.
What their need is, they want to get that fixed.
Mhm.
They're not interested in your product. They're not interested in Swiggy. They're not interested in Zomato. It just happens to be something that solves their need better, right?
Correct.
So what I think is, a product guy, all they need to do is empathize with the user, and they should understand their needs. Someone who understands the needs of a user better is someone who can do product better. That's all there is to it. I used to travel a lot by trains, and when I
Mhm.
started traveling by flights, I saw that there were so many vacant flight seats in the flights, whereas trains were almost on waiting list, right? I could. I like to believe that I'm a very intuitive person.
Mhm.
And I'll come to that in a bit. I believe there are broadly two types of product people as well. I'll come to that in a bit. But I could, put two and two together. I could see vacant flight seats on which airlines are losing money, because once the flight takes off, those vacant seats are waste, right?
Right.
And then there are so many people on waiting list. I could put them together and I could think of that idea, right? Way before anyone else did. Now coming to the intuitive part, so I believe there are roughly, broadly, there are two kinds of people who do product. One, people who are very intuitive, people who are who, just like I did, put those two things together and could come up with this idea. I could ideate and build, think of a product around it, right? And now
Mhm.
that I'm doing with Multiply, I could there are so many things that go on in Multiply, and I'll talk about that later. But I could put all of them together and could think of a product around it, right? So I like to think of myself as an intuitive product person or a product manager. Then there are people who are not so much intuitive, but they are more methodical. And being a good product manager requires both. Some people are more intuitive, some are more methodical, but you need to be, have some part of both. If someone is good at both, which is very, very rare, they'll be the best product manager, but it's very
Mhm.
tough. So I think a good product team is to have someone who's intuitive. And when I say intuitive, I mean they are right most of the times with their intuition, right?
Correct.
Intuition is good only if it is right most of the times, right? And someone who's methodical. If two such people can come together to build a product, that's an amazing product team. And why I say anyone can do that is because this does not require any special skill. There's no university degree that you can get to get
Mhm.
into product and get into product management. There are very simple things that you can learn. In fact, I have seen people who have read books on product management and now they call themselves as product managers. I think that's a very sad idea. That's not how you become product managers. You become product managers by building products, and you build products by talking to users, by understanding their pain points, by understanding their needs. Right? It's a very learning on the job sort of a thing. So yeah, I mean that's what I feel about product and product
Got it.
management.
Got it.
So, Ankush, I had a follow-up question on that, right? Like, again, to get some light on the entire product bit. So, essentially, there was this conversation that happened between Kunal Shah and a great product manager called Shreyansh Doshi on Cred Curious, right? And what Shreyansh was saying, that essentially an effective or a healthy product manager to engineer ratio is somewhere around 1 is to 8 to 1 is to 20, right? And in India, that ratio is somewhere around 1 is to 2 or 1 is to 4, right? So what essentially Shreyansh was trying to say is that product managers in the US or in the West are more efficient in terms of developing products, and they are, the products that they develop are more end to end, right? Wherein in India, majority of the newer products that we see in the market are actually second to what has already been developed in the Western world, right? So, what are your insights, or what is your opinion to that?
Right. Great question, yaar. So one thing, I mean, like you yourself said, in India, we try and copy everything that happens in the West, right? So this product management wave and, holding product managers on a pedestal, this again came from the West. And like everything else, we did it to an extreme. So the ratio of product managers to India, like you said, is 1 is to 2, 1 is to 3. Uh, One, because we overdid it. We heard about product managers. These are some mythical beings who make amazing products, who make your who will come and, do some magic and make your product more relatable and more acceptable to the users, and users will just immediately start loving your products. We did that and we overdid that, so we hired way more product managers, because of which what has happened is a lot of product managers in India are project managers. What they're actually doing is they're doing the bidding of the founding team. Now there's this one very nice thing that I've heard, and which I also sort of understand and sort of relate to, is that the toughest role to fill for a founder is the product manager role, is the head of product role, because a founder almost always wants to, hold that mental and, try to drive the product themselves, because they have some vision of that product, right? And it's unfortunate that because of that, what happens is most product managers become project managers. They are given not enough freedom by the founding team. They are given directives by the founding team. ये बनाना है, ये बनाना है, ऐसे इन यूजर्स के लिए बनाना है, वो पहले से सब बता देते हैं. You just have to execute that. So you're a project manager, not a product manager anymore, right? That is what is happening. And because we have overdone it, and that's the reason, because we got really excited about product managers, that's the reason we hired a lot of product managers. Everyone went into product management. I know engineers, back end engineers, front end engineers who left really high paying jobs because product managers were getting paid even more. They left very high paying jobs, software engineering jobs at big organizations, and got into product management. I know people in my team who were in tech, who tried to get into product management, did a course somewhere on Upgrad or wherever. I think they paid like 1.5 2 lakh rupees and thought they'll become product managers. Tried very hard. They're still doing engineering, right? So I think it was a hype. I think it's dying down a bit now. I have understood. I think I understood quite some years ago that it's a hype, and I think West understands it really well. In India, will take some time. We always lag behind. Will take some time in understanding this as well.
So Ankush, that's like a very, creative yet to the point summation on the piece, right? So now moving and shifting gears to the multiply story, right?
Yeah.
One very important thing that you spoke as a native quality for a good product manager is to understand empathy, right? And
Yes.
I think as the foundation, as the founding layer for multiply, do you accredit your time at IIT Delhi to get some nuance on personal finance and credit card? Because again, engineers are great at thinking, great at logic building, right? But when it comes to personal finance hygienes or managing your wealth, engineers at the start, struggle at that. So was that in some sense accredited to, you starting multiply, and how did the multiply journey, then moved forward from there?
Yeah, no, I like to believe IIT taught me one thing, which is engineering is not for me. And mostly that. In terms of finance, I don't think I learned much there. But what did happen was when, like I said, when I dropped in my final semester, right, and I went to Bombay and I was working on this air travel idea. Uh, I had not told my parents that I'm dropping out. So when they found out that I dropped out, and by the time I had already been thrown out of my own startup. So there was a whole scene, right? My father called me and he asked me to come to Delhi ASAP, and I came back, and there was a whole scene. Everyone was crying, whatever. Anyway, so then he told me, then he asked me what my plan was. So I said I'll finish graduation. So he said I'm not going to pay for your last semester. So I was like, fine, that's okay. I'll figure something out. So I joined a call center. Basically, it was a 3 month assignment, fixed 3 month assignment. I joined a call center, and I used to work from night till like 7 or 8 in the morning, and then I would go to college, attend classes, come back home, sleep for 3 or 4 hours, then go to the call center. So I did this for about 2 or 3 months. uh, my dad was harsh, but I think what he did was really amazing at that point of time, because the value of money that I learned during those 3 4 months, the money that I made from that call center job, I obviously paid my last semester fee, and I made a little more than that as well, which I paid back to my dad. uh, I think that was the time when I started thinking about money very differently, because I was burning the candle from both ends. I was sleeping 3 4 hours a day max, and I was working and studying to pass my last semester, earning money. I realized how hard it was, right? So that's when actually it changed how I thought about finance. So yeah, I mean, I hope I answered your question.
So just that is where the foundation got laid for finance, right? But like just to introduce multiply to the larger audience, right? Like when
Right.
did you transcend into the multiply journey, and how was the idea born, and is getting productized right now?
Right. So so this happened. I completed my graduation, and like I said, post that I took my first job in teaching. I started at Bansal classes, and then I got these first few credit cards as well. So I mean, I was always interested in ever since college. I was always interested in gadgets and stuff, and I was also interested in travel a lot. But I did not have a lot of money at that point of time, right? So slowly I started figuring out that I could afford a lot of these things. I could afford a lot of these gadgets and a lot of this travel that I wanted to do for very cheap. There's a term that I like to call, which is affordable luxury. So I started thinking of luxury in a way that I don't really need to be extremely rich. I don't need to be extremely wealthy to afford luxury. There are ways that I can afford luxury within my means, right? And that is where the seed of multiply got sown actually. When I got these first cards, and when I started realizing what cards could do, what being judicious about your spending could do, by how splitting your spends into EMIs, and doing all of that, I could manage my money better, I could manage my spends better, I could make bigger expenses, more luxury expenses, and still could afford them. So that's when it started actually. But that was just the stage where the seeds got sown. It took a much fiercer form a little later, but yeah, that's when it started.
Awesome. So, Ankush, obviously now that we've spoken about multiply, just wanted to know what exactly is multiply and what are you trying to gain out of it, or how are you trying to help, the users of credit cards, so as to say.
Sure. So, like I said, I've been using credit cards for 13 years now, and for about 9 10 years, I've been using them extensively to earn rewards and get stuff for free through those rewards. So how I like to call it, abusing credit cards for the last 10 years. So so over the last few years, what I realized is all these mental models that I've created, on which cards to keep and which card to use for which transaction so that I maximize my rewards, and then how to redeem those rewards to get maximum value out. So I had a lot of mental models in my head that got created over last several years, which I still use. So I thought if I could convert these mental models into an app, into basically an algorithm that could help millions of Indians do the same, that would be super amazing, right? Uh, Couple that with the fact that credit cards are one of the least understood products, financial products in India, right? For a population of 140 plus crores, there are just about 8 crore outstanding credit cards in India, and those two are held by between 3.5 to 4 crore Indians. So very low penetration. But good thing is that the market is growing very handsomely. It's growing at 25% YOY. Not many markets can boast of that sort of a growth rate, right? So we know that this number from 8 crores is going to go up to 25-30 crores in the next 5-6 years. It definitely is at the rate that it is growing. And we want to be a part of that journey. We want to be an integral part of that journey when this number goes from 8 CR to 30 CR. At Multiply, our goal is to simplify and demystify credit cards for Indians. That's the primary goal with which we are building the product. Now, what the product itself is, so I like to break it in three different chunks. The first one is when we take users' data, their income data, how much they're earning, their spending patterns, how much they're spending, where they're spending, their interests, if they fly or if they take a train, how many times they go out for movies in a month, how many times they go out to eat at restaurants, etc., etc. We take all of that data, and then our algorithm basically gives a curated set of 2, 3, 4 cards that that individual should keep to maximize returns on all of their spends. So that's the curated set for that individual. Two people who are both earning 10 lakh rupees a year, who are both spending 7 lakh rupees a year, may have very different set of cards. Because it not just depends on your income and your spending, it also depends on where you're spending, how much you're spending, and what you're interested in. If you fly, if you take trains, if you how much you eat out, etc., etc., on all of those things. So the set of cards could be very different. So that's the first part of the product. Second part of the product is where whenever you're transacting, either online or offline, the product will tell you which is the right card to use for each transaction so that you maximize rewards on every transaction, right? This sounds trivial, but it really is not, because there are roughly about 500 credit cards in the country and new ones are getting launched every day. And these credit cards have such different and convoluted reward structures that we have had to work really hard to create this algorithm which in real time suggests the right card to use for each transaction. And then the third part of the product is when you have the right set of cards, when you have used them in the right manner on each transaction to maximize your rewards, we tell you how to convert these reward points into maximum value for you. So what I mean by that is, for some people, maximum value could be just converting those reward points into cashback or statement credit, right? But someone who flies may want to convert those reward points to domestic flight tickets or international flight tickets and get way more value out of it. Someone may be interested in luxury and may want to get luxury gadgets, Apple phone and iPad and stuff, or luxury stays at 5-star hotels, etc., right? So accordingly, based on your interest, we help you convert those reward points to maximum value. So we take care of the entire value chain, right from helping people get the right cards to use them to maximize rewards, and then how to convert those reward points to maximum value. So that's what Multiply is going to do.
Understood. So basically, there are three kind of phases which you said. One is what and how are they spending, how much are they spending. Second one is basically filtering out basis that what are the credit cards that suit their needs, and third one is taking out the best value out of the spends they do on those credit cards, if I may say so. Is that understanding correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly like that. So the first part is where we suggest the right cards, in short.
Correct.
Second part is where we help you use those right cards in the right manner. That's
Okay,
a very
understood.
crucial thing, right? And the third
Right.
part is redeem them for the maximum value. Yeah.
Correct, correct. And so, as a user, obviously, a lot of first-time credit card users who have no idea what the credit card is, but they just get a free credit card from a bank, and
Right.
and I have been a victim of that as well. That
Yes.
when I was earning just like a stipend of 20-25K, I had a credit card which had a limit of just 11,000 rupees. Right.
Right.
When I started using, I think 8 7 8 years back. The biggest mistake, and at that time I was also privy to it, that people kind of use credit cards and pay just the minimum amount, like
Right.
because they think that okay, bank is just asking for a minimum amount, okay, I can pay it. But they don't know that what are the charges, what are the interest going to be on the outstanding, and every time you spend more, then it just kind of recurs every time.
Right.
So how does one kind of get a one-on-one on credit cards, if he's a first time user and wanting to kind of get into that zone of spending via that?
Right. What we are building is a completely tech product, and there isn't really going to be any one-on-one, in-person thing where you can talk to a person. But
Correct.
what we are trying to do in the product is, so we're building the product from the lens of a very new user who's never held a credit card. Because, like I said in the beginning, we believe it's one of the least understood financial products in the country.
Correct.
And our goal with Multiply is to demystify and simplify credit cards for users. So, a big part of our product is the knowledge base in the product, where we have a lot of write-ups and videos and stuff built within the product, which which helps a user understand all the basics, starting from what a minimum due amount is, what a total due amount is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That and rewards come much later. First of all, you need to understand how to use a credit card so that it does not become a liability. You don't have you're not ending up paying
Right.
42% interest yearly, right?
Right.
So the first step is to make people aware that credit cards uh, can be scary, but if you understand them well, if you understand the basics, they can become rewarding instead of being a liability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the purpose is, and that is how we have designed the product, to first create awareness, to first teach these new users about credit cards before actually helping them get their first card. So that's
Understood.
how the product has been designed. So it will be a very different journey for different kind of user. For someone like you who already has card, so when you onboard on the product, I'll do a credit run on you, and I'll already know if you have any cards or not, right? And I'll also
Okay.
know which all cards you have. So based on that, I know where to start you from. I know if I
Mm-hmm.
need to teach you about minimum due or not, and I know if I need to teach you how credit cards work, etc. or not. And if there's someone who comes on my app and who's never held a credit card, I know where to begin them from, where to begin their journey from. So the journey of every
Correct.
user is going to be extremely personalized to them on the app.
Understood. Also, a lot of people have that notion that why are you paying for a credit card? It just doesn't make sense. You're pay anyway using a credit card, then you're paying on it, and I don't know whether that's going to be fruitful or not. And versus just take a free credit card, you're anyway getting rewards and stuff like that.
Right.
Uh, uh, can you just help our listeners understand why is it also necessary, or why is it also useful to have a paid credit card?
Definitely, yeah, it's a great question. Actually, I think most people get sold on this lifetime free credit card thing, right? Uh,
Correct.
you get a call from someone and they say कि sir free credit card है lifetime के लिए आपको कुछ नहीं कभी pay करना है and please get this card, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people think then what's the harm? I'm not going to pay any fee. Problem is, cards that are free or that are lifetime free are
Mm-hmm.
generally not rewarding. Are the rewards on those cards are very, very
Absolutely.
minimal. If you get what you pay for, right? You get what you pay for. So cards that you actually pay high fees on are way more rewarding. So for instance, I have cards that I have one card on which I pay 59,000 fee per year. I have one card on which I pay 70,800 rupees fee per year. So I have some extremely expensive cards that way. But I don't mind paying that fee, because even if I'm paying 59,000 fee on a card in a year, I know I'll get more than 5 lakh worth of benefits out of that card.
Correct.
Now, I won't go
Correct.
into the details, and that is what Multiply is for. That is what Multiply will teach people how to get those benefits out. But the basic is, if a card is free, it is not extremely rewarding. Paid cards are generally way more rewarding. That's the basic. Now, sometimes people get even very rewarding cards for free, for lifetime free, and that's an offer that you should obviously not refuse. That you should
Yes.
obviously take. If you're getting a card
Right.
which usually sells for 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, and you have a good relationship with your bank and they are offering that card to you for free, you should obviously get it if it makes sense for you. And how do you know if it makes sense for you? Multiply is going to answer that for you, obviously.
Understood.
So that another thing is, almost all cards that have a fee on them usually give you welcome benefits that are worth almost equal to the fee. So if you actually think about it, I mean, if you're not very short sighted, if you think about it, if you give some time and put your mind to it, you'll realize that the fee that you're paying, you're actually getting it back almost immediately, within a month or so.
Correct.
For instance, I'll give you one example. So there's this Axis Bank and Vistara range of cards, three cards, right? So there's this one basic card which gives, I think the fees is around 1,500 bucks or so. I don't
Fifteen
exactly,
hundred. That's right. 1,500.
but you get an economy, Vistara economy class ticket
Correct.
voucher on that. Now that
Correct.
ticket can easily be worth 5,000 rupees. You're paying 1,500 rupees fee for that card, but you're getting a ticket voucher which is easily worth 4,000, 5,000 bucks, depending on where you fly, right? And similarly, the other variants, the second variant gives you premium economy ticket, and the third variant gives
Yes.
you business class ticket. So even if you
Correct.
pay 10,000 rupees for the business class variant, you get a business class ticket which could easily be worth 20,000 rupees, right? And almost every card out there that charges a fee gives you joining benefits or annual benefits which are worth or more than worth the fee that you're paying. So
Right.
fee should be something that you should not really care so much about. If you're actually, if you want to embark on this journey of using credit cards to get returns on your spending, fees is something you should not really worry about so much.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed.
So, Ankush, now just moving to the conclusionary ends of our conversation, right? Before the last segment, which we have for all our panel members, just one last question, right? So I think, like you rightly said, credit card industry in India is highly underpenetrated with a huge headroom for growth, right? What
Yes.
do you think would be those three drivers which will drive the growth of credit card in the country, right? Like very simple, very straightforward.
I'm inclined to say one of them will be Multiply. Uh, I hope that's true. But
Right.
I think it's already happening, yeah. I mean, I think one crucial thing, to be honest, one very crucial thing that could help this growth to pick up even faster is awareness.
Yeah.
One thing that is lacking is definitely awareness, and which we want to solve, which we plan to solve with our product. So that is one primary thing. Second thing is also regulation. So one thing that had been there till for quite some time was, banks were not very transparent about their fees and rules on credit cards. But very recently, RBI came out with these new directives on credit cards, which basically forces banks to be very transparent about the fees and rules and regulations on credit cards. For instance, now since that RBI directive has come out, if you request, let's say, your bank to close your credit card, and they don't close it beyond 7 days, so after 7 days you are entitled to receive, I believe, 100 rupees per day from your bank. They're supposed to pay you that fine if they don't close your card even after 7 days of you requesting it, right? So first part is awareness, second part is definitely regulation, which RBI is actually, I mean, I think it's more than proactive about it, or has gotten more proactive now. um, Third, I think, like I said, there are 500 or so credit cards in the country, but in my opinion, roughly about 35 to 40 of them are worth keeping for anyone. So even in Multiply, what we've realized is, so our algorithm suggests out of the 500 cards, our algorithm almost always suggests just 35 cards. Uh,
Hmm.
so rest all the other cards are not worth keeping for anyone, right? So I think the third would be maybe a better catalog. So many new companies are trying to come up with credit cards. I had a call today with Aditya Birla. They are trying to come up with a credit card on their own. Initially, it will be a co-branded card. Then they want to launch it on their own, in their own name, on their own platform. Um, I have talked to several others. So there's this company called Pepper Money that is also planning to launch its own credit card. So I know a lot of people are trying to launch their own credit cards. Cred is also planning to launch a credit card, I believe. A lot of them are trying. So I believe a wider catalog, better options for people. That may also be something that will help in growth of this industry faster. So yeah, and like I said, Multiply definitely would be on top of all of them. So yeah.
I agree, and I feel just to add to what you said, Ankush, was that the increasing consumerism, right? People are like now consuming a lot of things than they were doing before, right? Everything has become so instantly gratified nowadays because of all the 10-minute deliveries and Swiggies and Zomatos, that the people, like, everyone's going to increase consuming a lot of goods and services every day, and
Right.
that, along with obviously UPI also being there, would also increase a lot of people moving onto the credit card side of the story, obviously after the awareness increasing,
Yes.
because consumerism is going to blow up in the next decade, I feel.
Yes.
And
Disposable income in
correct.
India is growing at a very fast pace.
Yes,
Yeah, that's true.
yes,
That's
yes.
true. And that also ties in with the consumerism thing that you talked about. Yes.
Right, right, right.
So,
Awesome.
Ankush, just last two questions, right, that we have for all our panel members. One, again, this is something that might be super personal to you, and we strongly feel that each panelist has a very subjective opinion and take to it. Is that, a, what is your definition of personal finance and financial freedom, like financial freedom at large, and secondly, what are the sources of knowledge that you've used in terms of podcasts, books, etc., right? Because we feel that content is going to be a very strong driver for distribution and awareness creation for all companies, be it a B2B or a B2C play, right? So
Yes.
these two questions for you.
Okay. Yeah. So talking about personal finance, I mean, for me, it's a very simple definition. I believe uh, the goal of money is to accord you freedom, right?
Yeah.
I think that is what people should strive for, and that is what everyone's goal with their personal finances should be. How they get more and more freedom with their time. How do they manage their money well? How do they create wealth for themselves with whatever they're earning? There's so many examples. There's this really amazing book which is getting very popular nowadays. I think um, I'm forgetting the name right now. I recently heard The Art
The
of
Psychology of Money.
The Psychology of Money. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Very popular book right nowadays. So it gives so many examples. People who are in very normal roles, they accumulated such huge wealths, right?
Correct.
So it does not matter what kind of a job you are in, what kind of income you have, you can still create a lot of wealth. And the purpose of wealth is to accord you freedom. So for me, finance, personal finance, anything related to personal finance, for me, it should eventually turn into making me more free, giving me freedom of my time. So that's what it means to me. Coming to podcast and books, yeah, I used to listen to podcast a few years back. So I was a fan of this podcast. It's a I mean, very different from what I usually do. It's a podcast on psychology. I think the name was "You're Not So Smart." Very interesting. It talks about psychology and biases and stuff. I found it very interesting. So, and then there was, so I'm generally interested in, I talk about, business and fintech and stuff on LinkedIn as well. And so there was this very wonderful podcast called Business Wars that talks about, old companies and rivalries between old companies. And
Excellent podcast.
excellent podcast. So I used to listen to that. But it's been quite a while since I've listened to podcast because I moved on to audiobooks. I found podcast a little distracting in a good way,
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
got too involved in those. So I moved on to audiobooks, and then I started using Audible quite a bit. So didn't haven't listened to a lot of podcasts recently. Coming to books, there's this one book I suggest to everyone I talk to. um, it's called Delivering Happiness by Tony Shea. He was the founder of Zappos, which was acquired by Amazon quite some time back. I think he recently died as well, this guy. So that book is an amazing book if you're in any kind of business. If you one must read that book. It's about how you build empathy towards your users and stuff, things that I always talk about, right? So that's one book I really really like. Then other than that, mostly nowadays I read biographies. Some time back, a few years back, I believe I read uh, Virgin's founder. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name.
Dr. Richard Branson.
Richard Branson, yes. I read his autobiography. I found that really amazing. Very enterprising fellow, right from his school days. Yeah, so I'm nowadays I'm into biographies and autobiographies a lot. I think they teach you. Uh, they, I believe biographies are a very different way to learn, right? Because everything else, every other kind of book, every other business book, every other self-help book has actually been written with a motive to teach you, right? But generally biographies and autobiographies are not written with a motive to teach you anything. So everyone takes very different learnings from a biography or an autobiography, right? So I really love that. I really love reading about a person's life and taking lessons out of their life that I feel are relevant to me. So that's what I like doing, but that's just my personal style. I mean, that maybe it's not recommended for everyone, but yeah. So
Awesome. I think we've had like an amazing conversation. There's a lot to learn, especially on two sides of the thing. One is how to build a product where you empathize with the end user as to what they need, and second one obviously is on the credit card side. And obviously when Multiply launches, a lot of people will have a lot of insights on credit cards, and they'll get the right credit cards for themselves. So thanks, Ankush, for taking the time out. I think we had an amazing time. There was a lot to learn, and wishing you a great stint in Ireland as well. So yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Samarth. Thank you, Samyak. Wonderful talking to you guys. Yeah,
uh,
have a nice day.
yeah. So just I'll end recording. You'll have to wait for 20 seconds
Sure,
to just to kind of get it uploaded. So yeah,
sure.
I'll just do that.